Grandma walked in on me and my cousin doing it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. My grandmother is a 97-year-old woman. She survived the war. As a teenager, she worked in a factory. This woman is made of steel. Well, my 19-year-old cousin, who I hadn't seen in 3 years, came over with his parents. And let me tell you, it was lust at first sight. By the way, I'm an only child, so I am used to getting what I want. And as soon as I saw him, I knew that I wanted him. I know, it's sick and twisted, but he's my third cousin. So I guess it really doesn't count that he's my cousin, right? So 2 months ago, my dad moved my grandma into our house. And we started planning her 97th birthday party. So my cousin and his parents started coming over more often. And every time we would see each other, we would just stare at each other. We would flirt a little bit. I knew that he was into me just as much as I was into him. Around the 4th time they came over to our house, I asked him if he wanted to see my room. Our parents didn't suspect a thing. In my room, he asked me if he could kiss me. And I said yes. We took off our shirts and started making out. Part 2 is up. Making out with my cousin in my bedroom, I could hear my parents calling from downstairs. We put our shirts back on and pretended like nothing happened. Like I said in part 1, we were planning my 97-year-old grandma's birthday party. So my cousin and his parents were coming around the house pretty often. And every time he would come over to my house, we would pretend that we were going to do something on my laptop upstairs. When in reality, we were just making out. One of the times they came over, my parents started getting pretty drunk. And this was great for me because he and I could just go up to my room and they wouldn't notice. So once we get up there, he starts trying to take off all my clothes. And I'm like, nope. I may make out with my cousin, but I have some self-respect, okay? And I gave in and we did a few naughty things, but I don't kiss and tell. That same weekend was my grandma's birthday party, and I pretty much knew that things were gonna go down with my cousin. He was even planning how it was gonna happen. We would wait until everyone was drunk enough downstairs to come up to my room. So that's what we did. There were so many people at our house for the birthday party. We had music, lights, and catering, but pretty much no one would notice that we were gone. We head up to my room and instantly start taking off our clothes. We're both down to our underwear and start kissing on the bed. That's when we get fully naked. Part 3 is up. My cousin and I are fully naked making out on my bed. And here is where I failed. I thought I locked my bedroom door, but I didn't. We go from making out to doing more stuff, and then more and more stuff. He's on top of me at this point, so I can't really see my door. My cousin and I are going at it. Then all I hear is my door creaking open. We stop and look over his shoulder. That's when we see our grandmother. But here's the thing. She couldn't actually open the door all the way. My hamper was right behind the door. My bed is behind the door. So at this point, he gets off of me and we're both trying to get dressed as quickly as possible. And my grandma just says, "Are you coming down to the party or not?" Then she fully opens the door. I'm halfway dressed and he is less than halfway dressed. She actually started laughing and says, "Oh, I knew you guys were up to something." Then she said, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." My cousin and I looked at each other and didn't say a word. That's when she says, "You two better come downstairs before someone else comes up." I actually could not believe it. We end up going downstairs and have a great time with our families. Later that night, my grandma pulls me aside and says, "Life is short, so you should have fun. But try to not have too much fun with your cousin." But yeah, this didn't stop us. After the party, I ended up going to his house and we finished the job there. Am I really disgusting for this? We've been doing it every day. This is how I found out my ex was grooming my little cousin. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. At this point, I had walked in on my boyfriend with a 12-year-old girl. This little girl told me that my ex was her boyfriend. I called the cops and they came right away. A few weeks later, the cops came to our house and told us that they had found some messages on his phone and that they were from my little cousin. He had met my entire family. And of course, he had met all my little cousins. One of them being an 11-year-old girl. After the day he met her, he found her on Instagram and started sending her messages. And of course, she wrote back. She's a little girl. Why would she think anything was wrong? But side note, I was really angry at my aunt for even letting her 11-year-old daughter have an Instagram. Unchaperoned, by the way. It's not like my aunt was checking her messages or anything. My husband had decided that he wanted to meet up with her at a park. He even told her not to tell anyone or me. I'm terrified at the thought of what he would have done to her if he'd gotten her alone at the park. Like I said in part 3, he's in prison. The cops had found over 30 little girls that he was in contact with. So if you have a kid, please do not let them have Instagram. If they have their own cell phone, please check their messages. He also used Snapchat as a way to getting to kids. So don't let them have Snapchat. Luckily, my little cousin is okay. She has no idea what happened. My aunt took away her cell phone and gave her a flip phone instead. Are you the type of parent that lets their kids have social media unmonitored? Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husbands. Bye. Is it normal that my father still hits me even as an adult? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. When I was a kid and I got in trouble, my dad would hit me. I always knew to expect it, so it wasn't a really big deal. But of course, I would do my best to stay out of trouble. Sometimes he would use a belt and sometimes he would slap me across the face. The slapping was the worst part. From the ages of 10 to 12, I didn't really get hit because I never got in trouble. When I turned 14, things started getting rough. I wanted to date boys and my dad was not having it. So his form of punishment sometimes was even taking food away from me. This happened on 2 occasions when I was 14 14 and I almost ran away because of it. I know most of you are thinking that my mom should have stepped in, but my mom was pretty afraid of my dad too. Sometimes I feel like my parents have brainwashed me into thinking that what my dad is doing is fine. The sad part is that I'm now 20 and my dad still hits me from time to time. I do have to say my father has always been there for me. He's provided me with a great life and a good education. And it's not like he would just hit me out of nowhere. It was only when I got in trouble and for specific reasons. But I do think he needs to stop it because I'm 20 now. Here's where things get really messy. I just got engaged and my fiance hates my father. Follow for part 2. Is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? Now that I'm 20 and engaged, I told my fiance about what my father did. Like I said, my father wouldn't just hit me out of nowhere. He would only do it when he was punishing me and for specific reasons. But my fiance loathes my father. He thinks it's abuse and that it wasn't a normal thing for me to have to endure as a child, especially as an adult. And I've only come to realize that what my dad is doing is probably wrong because of my fiance. Before that, I never had anybody in my life tell me that what my dad was doing was wrong. But here's what happened. My fiance and I were cooking in my parents' kitchen. My dad must have been in a really bad mood because he comes into the kitchen and says, "If you don't clean up this mess, I'm gonna show your fiance how I slap the shit out of you." My father had never shown that side of him in front of my fiance. But as soon as those words came out of my father's mouth, my fiance turned to him and said, "You will never put your hands on her again." And my dad said, "That's my daughter and I can do whatever I want." My fiance asked me to leave with him and I did. My mom called us and begged us to come back, but my fiance said no. Part 3 is Is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? After my fiance stood up to my dad, we didn't speak to my family for about 2 months. That's when my fiance asked me to go to therapy. And I did. That's when I found out that what I really needed to do was fix my relationship with my father. Because he had always punished me physically, I held a lot of resentment towards him. And my father being very antiquated, he thought that he was doing the right thing. Now let me clear a few things up. He only hit me twice when I was an adult. Once when I was 19, I got a bad grade in one of my classes and he flipped out. He slapped me across the face and told me that that would teach me to do better. The second time was right after my 20th birthday. I had gotten into an argument with my mom that really wasn't such a big deal. My mom and I worked things out, but my dad thought it was inappropriate that I spoke to my mom like that. Was I very disrespectful? No. But to him, it was completely unacceptable. So he hit me once with his belt. My fiance is refusing to invite my parents to our wedding. And to be honest, I kind of agree with him. Ever since stepping away from my parents, I have so much more confidence. I'm also happier in my relationship because I'm getting to be myself. And I'm not afraid that anyone will punish me. But I do feel guilty. I want to reach out to my parents. I'm not sure. What should I do? Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I, female, 25, have been married to my husband for 6 months. When we started dating, it was just casual. I never thought I would marry this man, but it happened. We had a pregnancy scare, and that's when he told me that if I was pregnant, that he would marry me. We took a few pregnancy tests, and most of them came out positive. So we were convinced we were having a kid together. Of course, he asked me to marry him, and not until 3 months later did we decide to go to the doctor. And as soon as we got to the doctor, they said, "You're not pregnant." We couldn't believe it, but nonetheless, we were still married. He and I weren't exactly soulmates. When we started dating, we had a lot of fun together, but my friends would always make comments about him possibly being gay. I never took him seriously because he was interested in me, a woman. Sometimes my male friends would say, "Oh, he stares at me a lot," or that he would ask them to go out for drinks by themselves. I thought he was just trying to be nice and getting to know my friends. Obviously, I was wrong. My twin brother and I don't have a really close relationship. We had a falling out when he found out that I was pregnant. He thought I was ruining my life by having a kid, but it turns out I wasn't pregnant. So we started getting close again. He would come over to our house and spend a lot of time with my husband and I. But then I realized that they were doing naughty things together. Follow for part 2. Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I would come home and find my twin brother on the couch with my husband. Of course, I just thought they were trying to get to know each other. I mean, we just got married and all. Got to the point where my brother was coming over to my place every single day. And my husband and him would hang out all day together. My husband works from home, so he's always there. I own my own business, so I'm usually not home before 3 p.m. Every time I would come home, my twin brother was already there. Actually, I told my twin brother he needed to give me and my new husband our privacy. That's when he said that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to get to know him. Then he said, "Are you jealous?" I looked him straight in the face and I said, "Why should I be jealous? You're my twin brother." Then he laughed, got up, and left my house. And just like that, I knew something was going on. In part 1, I told you guys about those friends that warned me about my husband being gay. I decided to call on my friends and ask them to tell me why they thought my husband might be gay. They gave me lists. And I started writing everything down. And everything started connecting. I'd come to the realization that I married a gay man and that he was possibly having an affair with my twin brother. I mean, could things get worse? I decided to confront my husband. What he told me literally shocked me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband left me for my twin brother. I confronted my husband. He told me that my brother essentially had been following him around and wouldn't leave him alone. In other words, he was putting all the blame on my brother. But instead of believing him right away, I grilled him. Started asking him questions about his past, like why he had never had a relationship before me with another woman, why all of my friends, literally all of them, thought he was gay. Of course, he denied everything, so I got on the phone and called my brother. I asked him to come over really quick, and he did. And of course, I started interrogating him too. That's when I told my husband to repeat what he had told me. But he couldn't. He looked looked at my brother and said, sorry, I told her the truth. My brother said, which is? And my husband says, you won't leave me alone and that you've been harassing me. That's when my brother tried to swing at him. Then my brother spilled all the beans. He said that on my wedding night, my husband and him made out. And that after that, my brother would come to our house after I left every single morning to be with my husband and to do all the nasty things they wanted to do to each other. My brother told me that the one who started it was my husband. I looked at my husband and he couldn't deny anything. I divorced him the next day. My now ex is trying to convince my brother to be in a relationship with him, but he doesn't want to. And my dad is hunting my ex down. Bye. Story time about how I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me, and I do not regret it. Disclaimer is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My sister and I have always been rivals since we were kids. I'm 22 and she's 24. We were always super close in age, which means we competed for everything, including our parents' attention, clothes and makeup, and somehow we always ended up liking the same boys. When I turned 16, she was going away for college, and I actually started to appreciate her a lot more. We started calling each other every single day, and I realized that I really missed my sister. We actually got closer living further away than together. My parents were also really happy with this because her and I would not get along when she lived at home. One weekend I decided to go stay with her on her campus, and that's when things got interesting. My sister was living it up. She was partying all the time. I told her that I didn't really like that she was partying so much. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable with her passing out at random guys' places. She told me that I was overreacting and not to tell my parents. But I got home and told my parents everything. This is when our relationship became bad once again. After this, my sister didn't trust me, and basically she became my enemy. She started criticizing everything about me, the clothes that I'd wear, so I had to distance myself from her. My parents wanted her to move back in with us because she wasn't doing well in school. She was clearly partying instead of studying. Of course, my sister refused to move back home, so my parents basically cut her off. I got a new boyfriend at this time, and my sister would flirt with him anytime she came home. I even caught them hugging one time. Part 2 is story time about how I stole my sister's boyfriend and don't regret it. Disclaimer is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. When I walked in on my boyfriend and my sister hugging, I knew I had to do something. I went straight to my parents and told them what she was doing. My dad pulled her into her room and talked to her, but she totally denied everything. She said that she was not flirting with my boyfriend, but we all knew that was a lie. Even my boyfriend was honest with me and told me that she had been flirting with him openly. That's when my boyfriend told me he didn't even want to come over to our house because my sister made him that uncomfortable. And when I told my parents this, they felt so embarrassed. They called my boyfriend and personally apologized to him. He was actually so sweet though. He would come visit me to my house and we would just chill out in his car while my sister was inside watching us through the window. Yeah, she was crazy. He and I eventually broke up because he went off to live in another country. And guess what? My sister said that she knew he never loved me and that's why he left me. She was being so mean at the time. A few years later, she started dating someone. Of course, at the time, it never occurred to me to even flirt with him or act the way that she did with my boyfriend. You see, I'm above all that. But as soon as I got a new boyfriend, she would start flirting with him. And she had no shame about it. This became a running problem in my family. My parents would ask her to leave me alone and my boyfriends, and she would say that she did. But no, she didn't. Oh yeah, and her boyfriend broke up with her because he noticed that she would flirt with a lot of guys. Apparently, she did it even in front of him. So when she finally got a new boyfriend, I decided that I was gonna do the same thing to her. I started flirting with her boyfriend a little. Not a lot, but I definitely made sure to tell him I thought he was attractive. After a few weeks, he started saying things back to me, and I knew that it was working. I never did it in front of my sisters and my parents because I didn't want them to get mad at me. So instead, I got her boyfriend to basically fall in love with me. I already knew everything about him because my sister would tell me, so I just started telling him I liked the same things he did. It got to the point where one day he kissed me and I didn't tell my parents. I made sure to get his hopes up. Part 3 is up. I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me, her life turned to misery. No, I didn't regret it. Disclaimer is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. One day I went up to my sister and told her that her boyfriend had kissed me. First she thought I was making it up to make her jealous. She told me I could never compete with her and that she was the more beautiful sister out of the two of us. Which is wrong. So I handed her my phone so that she could see all the messages that her boyfriend and I had been sending each other. And that's when she lost it. She started wailing on me. She started slapping and kicking me. My parents ran into her room and asked her what was wrong. I told my parents that I treated my sister the way she treated me. She would always go after my boyfriends, flirt with them, and try to get them to break up with me. Of course, my parents didn't agree with me, so they were really angry. They separated us, but my sister went crazy. She called her boyfriend and told him to come over. Obviously, he didn't know that she already knew at the time. And when he came over, she started beating him up. He grabbed a pan from the kitchen and started swinging at him. She actually ended up giving him a concussion. After that, she begged for his forgiveness, but he still broke up with her. At the end of the day, he ended up leaving her. She was so stupid for begging him to stay with her. Her boyfriend even asked me if we could be together, and I told him no. I told him that the whole time I had just been playing him just to get back at my sister, which I know is so cruel, but he deserved it. After that, my sister and I decided to make peace. She told me that she wouldn't mess with my boyfriends anymore and that she would stop being evil. But after a month of having my new boyfriend, I found her flirting with him too. I told her if she didn't stop that I would make her life miserable once again. I'm pretty sure she has a boyfriend, but she doesn't want to tell my family. Cause she knows that I'll go after him and I would probably end up making him fall in love with me too. But at this point, I just don't know what to do. What should I do? She's so evil and I want to make her life miserable. Bye.